The topic that I'm going to deal with tonight is a very, very serious one. And that is because on October 27, 2018, 11 Jews were murdered and 6 were injured in an anti-Semitic attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. It was to be the most deadly anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. It's one of those events like where I was when 9/11 happened, where I was when Kennedy was assassinated, where I was when Rabin was assassinated. I know exactly where I was because on that morning I was at Lizzie Geyer's bat mitzvah. And when, like we do at all the bat mitzvahs, we walk around with the Torah, all of a sudden, I saw Ivan Cutler, his face was white, and he said, "You need to come out, something's happened." We went out into the hall, and he told me that there had been a shooting at Tree of Life Synagogue, and the shock of this was just so much. And I realized that we couldn't do anything about that with to affect Lizzie's bat mitzvah, but I'm telling you, it was just such a shock to the system, especially on Shabbat morning. And then it was about 12 o'clock when Congressman Mark Walker appeared in the back of the temple. Now, you may or may not like Congressman Walker. It doesn't matter because he's not running for re-election. But when he did that, and he came to this synagogue, he told Andy and me, he says, "I had to be with you guys. I had to be with you guys this morning." And it was what we call in Yiddish a mitzvahite thing to do, a truly amazing thing that he did. And then I remember that Wednesday night. Wow. I don't know how many of you were there, but there were 1,300 people on the inside. Paul Benson told me later that they had to restrict the number of people in there that was overflowing. There were 700 outside who couldn't get in, and they did their own service. They were behind me, okay, behind me around the fountain there. I've never seen something like this in Greensboro. It was a symbol and a veritable demonstration of resilience and hope and identity with the Jewish community. It was only later that we learned that the motivation for this terrible attack was that the shooter, Bowers, did not like the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society and the Jewish support for comprehensive immigration. This theme will come back in Charlottesville, by the way. But then on this second anniversary, on the 27th this week, I found myself asking, what do the words "never again" truly mean? You know, for those of us who teach the Shoah, for those of us who are Jews, never again really means something because we lost 6 million of our brothers and sisters. We say it many times. And yet, what has been shown from the Tree of Life and its aftermath is that anti-Semitism is still with us. There's been a dangerous rise in hate crimes over the past 4 years. In Charlottesville, they walked down the street and they were chanting, "Jews will not replace us." We didn't know exactly what that meant at the time, but that meant that we will not replace them by bringing in immigrants from Mexico or Central America. And no, I want to tell you, when I look back at Charlottesville and I talk to Rabbi Tom Guttman, there are not good people, very fine people on both sides. My friends, anti-Semitism is a unique form of hatred and bigotry. It's the oldest form that we know. But what makes it unique? What makes it unique is that it's upward hatred. It's trying to remove people who the anti-Semites feel are in power over them. The rest of the hatred, the rest of the different types of hatred, racism, and bigotry are downward. They're meant to keep gays down, or African Americans down, or Asian down. It's only anti-Semitism that is trying to reach up to a perceived opponent or a perceived group of people that are supposedly controlling things. So George Soros and anti-Semitism. But that's not all. There was other signs that anti-Semitism is on the rise in addition to the Tree of Life. There have been months of attacks against Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn in 2019. There was a shooting in the Chabad in Poway, California in April 2019, which killed one woman. There were attacks a week apart in December 2019 in Monsey, New York, and in Jersey City, in which 4 people were killed by assailants. My friends, there are multiple sources of anti-Semitism. There's the QAnon crazies, and they are nuts, in my opinion. And part of their ideology is that they're Satan-worshiping Jews who are running a secret global pedophile network. There's the white supremacist group, the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. There's college students who harass and marginalize Jewish students who dare to openly support Israel or fail to denounce Zionism as racism. We also have seen Black athletes and celebrities posting anti-Semitic messages on social media. The fact is that there's some who wish to make support for Israel a political and a moral sin. And then there's this nutcase, I'm sorry for being so blunt, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's running for Congress, I think from Georgia. She's a QAnon supporter. She posed with this one was going into Congress, by the way. She posed with photos for a former Nazi leader. She promoted conspiracy theories that accused George Soros and the Rothschild family of trying to control the world. So let's look at some statistics. First of all, regarding anti-Semitism, the Jews in the United States were asked, is anti-Semitism a serious problem in the United States? In 2014, there were only 14% of us who said it's a problem. In 2016, it had risen to 21%. In 2017, it was 41%. And now this past year, this is according to the American Jewish Committee survey, it's 65% of the American Jewish community feels that anti-Semitism is a problem. According to the Anti-Defamation League, anti-Semitic incidents hit all-time high in 2019 with over 2,100 anti-Semitic incidents. It will not be as high this year only because of COVID. Those anti-Semitic incidents included assault, vandalism, harassment, and 5 killings. Congressman Nita Lowey of New York and David Harris, the head of the American Jewish Committee, wrote in a recent op-ed in the New York Times, quote, first, we need to recognize the problem for what it is. It's an epidemic. She's talking about anti-Semitism here. We are no longer talking about isolated occasional actions, bad enough as those are, but a regular phenomenon. Second, they continue, we must acknowledge that there are multiple ideological sources feeding this paroxysm of hate. It is not a result of a single political outlook. And you know the truth of the matter is, you can be part of the Jews for Trump or the Jews for Biden, it doesn't matter. Both worry about anti-Semitism, whether it's from the right and the left. And then you're going to be amazed that I have the chutzpah to talk about this tonight, but it's really serious. And then there's the new Borat movie. If you haven't seen it, it's free on Netflix. I honestly felt, after watching that movie, that Sacha Baron Cohen is like a Charlie Chaplin figure in our age. You might remember that at the end of the movie, The Great Dictator, which I think was from 1937, Chaplin went out of character and tried to warn the world about Hitler. On the outside, Borat 2 is a comedy, but it's really serious. By the way, Borat tries to let Jews in on it. When he speaks in a native tongue to his daughter, he is speaking Hebrew, and she answers in Russian. Sacha Baron Cohen is fluent in Hebrew. His mother's an Israeli. To an extent, by doing that, I think Sacha Baron Cohen tried to bring us in on the joke. But this is not surprising because last year before COVID, Sacha Baron Cohen gave a speech, I think it was at the ADL, in which he critiqued Facebook, and he said Facebook would have let Hitler buy ads. But in the movie, again, if you haven't seen it, you should. It's gross at parts, but in the movie, there are several scenes which show that anti-Semitism lurks between the surface for many of our non-Jewish neighbors. For example, you might know that 250,000 gypsies, or as they were called properly, Roma, were murdered during the Holocaust. Other than the Jews, it was only the Romans that were the targets of genocide. And in the movie, Borat asked a shop owner who sells gas canisters, he says, how many of these gas canisters would it take to gas a truckload of gypsies? And there's no protest from the owner. And then he asked a baker to write on a cake that he's buying, Jews will not replace us. And she does so. She never even says anything. And then at the end, when she hands him the cake, it says, Jews will not replace us, and a smiley face. And then there's a plastic surgeon who can air trace a Jewish nose, pillaring us in a way that would have made the Nazi magazine, Der Stürmer, or the KKK Nazi magazine, The Stormer, it would have been found in such a publication. By the way, I'm not surprised at all. Some of the most educated people are also anti-Semites. Many in the Nazi echelon were highly educated people. As a matter of fact, one of the commandants at the death camp of Treblinka was a man who had a PhD from Marburg University, one of the most prestigious universities in Germany. My friend Rabbi Jeff Salkin, he's brilliant. He wrote a review of the movie of Borat, and he said, quote, plain folk are capable of extraordinary cruelty, but it never ceases to shock us, and it never should, unquote. Wow. The Borat movie, in reality, is not a comedy, but a shockingly serious movie about bigotry, hatred, and anti-Semitism. It is a presentation of what the philosopher Hannah Arendt would have called the banality of evil. It is a repetition of the phenomenon of inaction by bystanders during the Holocaust. So here's where we are, and what we must affirm in light of not only the phenomenon of the Tree of Life, but the events that have taken place both before and after, and including what we see in this movie. So what is our response? First of all, my friends, we as Jews will not stand idly by as there is hatred against us or against any American. We will not stand idly by. Those days, friends, are over. We will call out bias, bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, wherever it occurs. We Jews will renew our commitment to tikkun olam, to repairing the world. And as Jews, we will continue to affirm that every single human being is created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God, and deserves to be treated as such. And as Jews, we are not going from the horrific murders at the Tree of Life Synagogue. We're not going to move on. Listen to this. We're not going to move on. We are going to move forward. We will persevere. We will remain strong, no matter what the challenges our future brings. Now, I want to tell you that as Jews, as people who belong to this congregation, we are going to proudly light all of the building up on the 9th of November 9th. That's where we wanted to see what it was like. That's the picture in the background of me is a picture that Laura took so we could see. We didn't even have all some of the lights went on. We're going to light up all the lights, exterior, interior lights on November 9th will be left on. This is part of a worldwide commemoration of the terrible anti-Jewish riot on the night of November 9th in 1938, known as Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass. Thus far, we know that there are 144 institutions throughout the world, including, I think, 5 or 6 in Greensboro alone, that will be keeping their lights on in their houses of worship, in their institutions, and perhaps in our private homes as well. We will come together with people throughout the planet, from Australia to South America, to South Africa, to Europe, to Canada, to the United States, even in Dubai and in the Middle East, in Israel. Lights are going to be kept on. The program is called Let There Be Light Against Hate. And on that day, and on that night, which will be for us as Americans only 6 days after the election, we are going to take a stand as a Temple Emmanuel community and institution against all forms of bias, bigotry, racism, and anti-Semitism. If you'd like, you can go to the March of the Living website and record a comment. It has to be less than 300 characters about this campaign. Light up your houses if you can. We are not going back. We are going forward. We are going to go forward. But in saying that, as Jews, we will continue to hope and pray for the day. Continuing to hope and pray for the day when bigotry will be replaced by understanding, when hatred will be replaced by compassion, and violence will be replaced by peace. Chazak ve'amatz, may we go from strength to strength. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will, as it is our task. And together let us say, Amen.